Hi, it's Todd at Todd's Workshop and Todd Cutler here. And today we're going to talk about Joerg's Instant Legolas device and how that would have fitted into medieval history. But before we do that, just want to show off my lovely t-shirt designed by Emily, my editor's 6-year-old daughter, and available on the merch shelf. And today I'm back to talk about the Instant Legolas and where I would feel that would fit into the medieval world. A really accurate discussion of my ideas behind it, really. This was originally going to be a film with myself and Joe and using the medieval Instant Legolas that I had made. But unfortunately, the discussion stream that came off my second film about this went in a completely different direction to what Joe and I talked about. So it becomes almost pointless to show that film. I'm sorry about that if it disappoints any of you lot. The first thing to say, obviously, is this is Joerg's Instant Legolas that he originally sent me. My one has already gone on the way to Shad. It's somewhere between here and Australia. Shad's going to come back with him testing it with a £100 bow, I think. Let's see what comes out of that. But I'm now going to talk in great detail, really, about who I feel would have used this device and why they would have used it and in what situations they would have used it. Now, here's the spoiler. My views are different to Joerg's and probably different to Shad's as well. It doesn't mean we're enemies. It doesn't mean we're going to have a big argument about it. It means we've got different opinions. And that's what's wonderful about this sort of thing. I have found this whole process absolutely fascinating because it's just a complete learning exercise. I am fully aware that this device did not exist in the medieval world. But what if it had? And it's become almost like a weird sort of philosophy exercise, a thinking exercise in my head of where it would have fitted in. Because don't forget, actually, my channel is not listed as entertainment. It's listed as education. I do think that history is so rammed full of fascinating, exciting, interesting stuff that it should never be boring. And yet when I was at school, history was taught in a boring way. And it just shouldn't be. There's no need to do it. And Joerg's device has allowed me to think about history in a different way. Now, what did I make of Joerg's Instant Legolas device? Well, I mean, the first thing, which is just like so apparent with everybody who shoots it, is such good fun. Right, we're going to put that aside. We've got that. So what else does it give you? Well, it gives you a really high rate of fire. That's without a shadow of a doubt true. It was accurate. It was easy to use. I found it very intuitive. It was simple. And in a device which can shoot accurately over decent distances and with such rapidity and ease of use, that is just a fantastic package. It's a fantastic package, and I can absolutely see why you would want to pursue that in the medieval context and to scale it up and to go, does this work with a warbow archer? And that for me is where it begins to become a little more difficult. Now, people latch on to two things about the Instant Legolas straight away. They see the bow and they go, well, it's like a modified longbow. No, it's not. There is a bow at its power source. And then they see this part here and they go, well, that's a crossbow, isn't it? It's just a crossbow. It's not a crossbow. It just happens to be crossbow shaped. They are three different things. Instant Legolas, longbow, crossbow are different things. And different things are used for different purposes. So if you think about it in a modern context of firearms, there is a massive family resemblance between a pistol, an assault rifle and a sniper rifle. They all shoot bullets. They all have that same chemical reaction within the shell. They all drive a bullet down a barrel. There is a great family resemblance there, but they are entirely different weapons used for entirely different purposes. This is like that. The longbow is an open field weapon, and I don't really believe that the Instant Legolas is that. And I'm now going to go in and explain my thinking. I'm not denigrating it, I'm just saying it is different, it is other. People are the same now as they were then, and some highlights, some traits were more apparent in the medieval world. So, you know, people did want to be seen to be rich and ram it down other people's throats. I've got this, you haven't. But we still love the new, the novel, the gadget. And the thing is, yes, it would be expensive, and people go, oh, we haven't got the money for it. Well, things are no different now to they were then. And here's a clip of a pellet bow. So I don't know if any of you know pellet bows. This is one that I made. These came into high fashion in England around 1500. Every nobleman had one. You know, it was the thing to have. But what they're really for is shooting birds out of trees and rabbits in fields. They're nothing to do with noble hunting of boar or whatever. That's not what they're about. And yet they became such an item of fashion that there's a fantastic woodcut of Elizabeth shooting one of these, hunting a stag of all things, which is like massively inappropriate. Whether it's a fantasized portrait or not, who knows? But the bottom line is it's shown in that context. And then we look at this balestrino here, which in Victorian times was known as an assassin's bow. They weren't for assassinating people. It's got an impact energy of 2 foot-pounds or 3 joules or something. I've shown that. They don't deliver energy enough to kill. They're toys. People had them because they were fun and because they were new and other people didn't have them. And this fits that bill perfectly. So civilian life, absolutely this would have existed. Military life. Now there's a question. militarily, there is an awful lot to talk about here. So we're going to make some assumptions straight off the bat, that there's a lot of comments about Joe's position was incorrect, there was friction in the system, the trigger was the wrong way around, whatever it was. Forget about all that stuff, all right? That would have been ironed out in the manufacturer. I've made one. The next one, the 50th one. There'd be very different objects to they are now. So just assume that all of that gets sorted. Assume that the bowmen are going to be trained to use them so that they get used to the position changes, whatever it may be. There are two very boring, everyday reasons that I struggle with the Instant Legolas as a broadly deployed military device. The first one is complexity. So it was the first device I'd ever made like this, but nonetheless it's using the same techniques I'm used to doing. It took me at least 3 times as long as it would take me to make a regular 350, 400 pound crossbow. That was interesting. So it would be an expensive device. You know, even if I managed to smooth that out, it's going to be twice the time at least. And the second one is logistics. How do you supply a device like this that shoots so fast, so continually with arrows in a battlefield context? I'm going to use the Battle of Agincourt as an example for what I mean by logistics. They took with them around about, we don't know any of the exact numbers, around about 1 million arrows. We have to assume that that was as many arrows as they could take or transport or could manufacture. They had about 4,000 archers. The battle lasted about 4 hours. Now, of course, a battle doesn't mean that you're constantly shooting all the time, but if you average 1 million arrows over 4,000 archers over a 4-hour period, that is about 1 arrow a minute an archer. This thing can shoot 25 arrows in a minute. How do you service that? Now let's even assume that they could bring more arrows. The wagon trains with the arrow supplies are some hundreds of meters behind the shooting lines. So you've got some little boy servicing me with arrows here, coming backwards and forwards. So he's got to run 400 meters, sheaf of arrows, 400 meters. So you need multiple arrow boys per archer to keep that up. Or you bring the wagon trains forward. Imagine the toing and froing of people. Imagine the carnage behind the shooting lines of people just trying to bring arrows backwards and forwards and running. It would be a nightmare. Now, Joerg has made the very good argument that when a more powerful weapon comes along, logistics be damned, it will get sorted. Well, maybe it will. But part of my premise with this whole Instant Legolas thing has been to try and slip it into medieval life, not to rebuild medieval life all around it. And I cannot see logistically how this thing could get serviced with 100 Years' War type situations. The next problem I have with the Instant Legolas device as an open battlefield weapon is the repetition. Now, we saw Joe shooting a 120 pound bow, but he was shooting it rapidly. Now, his comment was that was hard work, that possibly because his position was wrong, the friction was in the system, whatever it might have been. But we'll assume that that can get ironed out, and I believe it probably could. But doesn't get away from the unavoidable fact that Joe is having to do this action again and again at great rapidity, and that's tiring. So both Joe and I felt for a device like the Instant Legolas, a much more usable and constantly usable poundage would be in the 90 or the 100 pound mark for a man like Joe. Now, when we come back again, there's discussion about, oh, this is the perfect peasant weapon. Well, is it? Because would that mean the average peasant who's not a bowman, like, let us just say me, I'm reasonably fit, I'm reasonably strong, and I shoot like most peasants would. I reckon I could handle a 50 or a 60 pound bow at that kind of repetitive speed. So it is not the game-changing powerhouse on the battlefield for peasants. It just couldn't be. Now, don't forget, shooting a bow is not just about training your arm to pull it back. You are part of a military machine. You are not just a random geezer who's turned up to do a job. You are a soldier. And with a soldier, just like then, just like now, training happens. You are prepared for what you are facing. You put this into the hands of a peasant, and a few things are going to happen. He's never seen a magazine loading device. He's never seen a self-loading system before. I get a jam on this, and any magazine feeding system will jam from time to time. Now, James the peasant has got no idea what to do. And you are expecting him to be in a shooting line while you've got cavalry charging at you or whatever it is. He's not wearing armour because he's peasanty. He probably hasn't got any kind of a decent side weapon because he's peasanty. He's now got a weapon that he can't shoot. He wasn't very happy in the first place standing there, but now he's got a weapon that he can't shoot. He's nervous as hell. He's trying to unjam it. That's not really working. He's dropped his bolt. His mate next door has poked him in the arm while he's trying to do it. Somebody else has been shot. It's all gone to hell, and your peasant chap is just going to go, you know what? I've had enough of this, and he's going to run. And the first thing that happens when somebody starts running, everybody else wants to know why they're running, and they're going to start getting twitchy. They're not focusing on that, and they're off as well. And then your whole setup of your peasants with your very expensively produced Instant Legolases has fallen apart. Give it to people who will stand. They know how to clear the jams because they've practiced it. They know how to reload fast because they've practiced it. They know how distances work and how long it takes cavalry or foot soldiers to come to them. So they will be calm. They will know that Jeremy and Francis will look after them while they're clearing a jam because they are trained. That is why I think it's trained soldiers. Because of the lower power that untrained people would require, and the fact that you've got the whole repetition thing built in that they will tire very quickly, you need a relatively light bow for an untrained person. That means your range is going to be short, maybe 120, 130 metres. So that means you are going to be well within the missile range of your enemies. And if there is anything guaranteed to make a peasant army rout, that is getting shot while they cannot shoot back effectively, knowing that what they are doing is not affecting the other side. Give it to people who are trained and know how to use it. But in an open battlefield situation, they're in exactly the same position, that they cannot shoot as far as their enemy is shooting. They can shoot faster, but they can't shoot as far. So they need to use it in different ways and in clever ways. And they leave the open battlefield for the people who can pretty much shoot like for like in distance, which means pretty much crossbows and longbows, or longbows and longbows. Much has been made about the speed of shooting of this. And for the first 5 shots, it's amazing. It's absolutely extraordinary. But then you've got to reload. If you look at this clip here, the advantage is not quite as great. There's still an advantage over regular shooting, but it's not so marked. However, I do believe that a speed clip for these devices would be easy to do now, and it would have been easy to do then. So I think we can assume that sooner or later they would have worked that one out and there'd be a speed clip in there. So that is great. It doesn't remove the repetition aspect. And once you've done 15 or 20 of these shots, you can't do it on a heavy bow. You need something that is maybe 50% of the power that you can regularly draw. And this is not about ripping this device apart. I think there are distinct military applications for it. I really do. But open field war is not what it's about. Just like a pistol does not fulfill the role of a sniper rifle and vice versa. The things are different. But I will tell you where I think that this would shine. When myself and my friends made the arrows versus armour video last year, we saw that actually, however powerful a longbow is, it still really struggles getting through plate armour. So we can assume that the Instant Legolas will never do that either, however powerful you make the thing. So that one's out. So that leaves you the lower grade armours, the mail and the gambeson, or the no armour, where I think the Instant Legolas will absolutely shine and come into its own. Of these particular situations, be it street fighting, naval warfare, sally gates, fords, battlements, you may think my ideas for using this for very specific situations are a little bit fanciful. These are the moments, those critical moments where something really tactically decisive has to happen, and you put this into the hands of people who really know what they're doing, and you know what? They can also, in order, when their time is done, fall back and let the regular bowman take over. The medieval world is full of weapons that were used for very specific circumstances. And if you go to the museums, they always have some. So a really good example of this are the gun shields off the Mary Rose. So this is a shield about that kind of diameter with a gun and a little sighting grating in the middle for repelling boarders. Single shot device. But they were there, and they were there in quantity. And then you have other things. I saw a fantastic gun in, I'm pretty sure it's a Polish museum, where it was all superimposed load. It was, I think, a 70-shot gun in 7 different barrels. And you ignited it once, and it just carried on going until the 70 shots were done. Right? Did it see widespread use? No, but there were many of them made. So you see these devices again and again, these sort of like specials. So is it fanciful to think that this would have been used in the way that I'm proposing? I don't think so. Would it have had a military application? I think absolutely it would, but I think it would be in the hands of the trained, proper, professional archers, not the peasant army. I think if you gave 500 of these to a peasant army, what you'd get is a very expensively equipped bunch of people that would be quite easy to rout. That would be my gut feeling. So it comes down to that big question. Would this have been a game changer in medieval warfare? I don't think so. It's just my opinion. But just like the gun shields, which were on the Mary Rose, they were fantastically useful. Every foot soldier could have been equipped with them, but they weren't. This device, every soldier could have been equipped with it, but I think by doing that, you are taking away other aspects of regular bows. They would have been used in conjunction. They would not have replaced. And they'd be used in conjunction under very specific circumstances for short-term, important tactical goals. I know there's a lot of delicate arguments on either side about this, and there are people so for it and so against it. But please don't throw insults at me. Throw information at me. It's much better, and it makes you look better as well. And Joerg, it's been an absolute pleasure being able to work on this with you. And thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. And now it's over to Shad. So Shad, time for you to do your thing.